Hey, happy Tuesday, everyone. I trust that you are having an amazing week so far. It is the last week of January. The first month of 2021 is, very close to being over, right? So where are you at? Did you set some goals for yourself at the beginning of the year, some things that you were going to change? Have you already thrown them aside? Or are you actually making progress? Like, where are you at? For myself, I started a fast at the beginning of the month. Started with 3 days of water only, and the rest of the 21 days was eating a very strict vegan diet, no sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine on top of all that. And I completed that over the weekend, and it really left me feeling an incredible sense of accomplishment. The other things that have opened themselves up for me during this time period have been incredible, right? So God has really moved in my life a lot. I had a lot of, confusion. I would call it confusion. It manifested as confusion, but it just really was a lack of clarity on what exactly I wanted to create in the world with God, right? And what I realized during this process was not that I didn't know what I wanted to create. It's just that I wasn't willing to really look fully at what it was that my heart was calling me to do and to go all in on that, right? Because we get to points in our life where, let's say, in business school, we would call it sunk costs, right? So I'm just going to explain this from a business school perspective because I think that's the easiest way to explain the concept before I drag it into regular life. So in business, you talk about, let's say, a manager who has this project that they decided they dedicated, a lot of budget, a lot of resources, people resources, money resources to creating this specific thing. And they're doing that. They're trying to create it, but this project is just not paying off, right? Maybe it's costing a lot more money than they thought. Maybe it's taking a lot more time. And it's just clear that this is not going to have the return on investment that was the original projections, right? And so this manager or this business unit is faced with the choice of, do they continue to throw money at trying to finish this project and create this project that's just gone over budget, over everything, right? Or do they scrap it? And what happens in a lot of cases, and this is oftentimes the downfall of businesses, and it can be the downfall of relationships, it can be a downfall of a lot of things, is that they take the stance that I have invested too much in this thing, and so we need to keep investing until it gets done. Like they look at the money, the time, the resources that have already been spent on this one thing, and they say, well, because we've already spent so much, we can't give up on this. And what they teach in business schools, that money, that time, those resources that you've already spent, we call those sunk costs, right? You can't recover them. They are sunk, they're gone. And the worst thing that you can do in business and in life as well is to make a decision based on sunk costs, right? You cannot decide that you keep going on because of these sunk costs, right? You can't spend, we already spent $3 million on this project, so we got to spend another $10 million because otherwise we wasted the $3 million. No. You can just say, okay, the $3 million's gone. Do we want to spend $10 million here? You can say no and choose to move on, right? So in life, that looks like somebody staying at a job for too long, somebody staying in a destructive relationship because they've already been in that relationship for, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, whatever, right? A ton of time. And so they're like, well, I can't get a divorce, or I can't leave this horribly abusive relationship because we've spent 20 years together and we have 2 children or 3 children or 5 children or whatever, right? And so they look at the sunk costs when making the decision instead of just looking at it from a clean slate and saying, this is a toxic situation, regardless of how long I've been in it, how much I've invested in it. It's time to leave this toxic situation because it is not a healthy place for me to be, right? And so when you're living in transformation in your life, this is coming to view the things in your life this way, right? Like there are no sacred cows. And this is really a stance that we have to take if we are really committed to being our best selves. Some authors might call it living in our zone of genius. Living our highest and best truths, creating what it is that God put us on this earth to create, this big audacious goal, this big project that God has planted in our heart. Like whatever those things are, these are the decisions that we have to face, right? We have to say, do I say, well, but I've already spent X number of years and X number of dollars and X number of emotional, deposits here. You look at the sunk costs and make the decision, then you're going to stay stuck where you are. So if you wanted to rapidly change your financial situation, or you have a huge goal that you want to create in the world, you can't look at where you are right now in the years that you've been here and the years that got you there in order to get to that place. You must ignore them. You must treat them as sunk costs. So why do I want to talk about this, living in transformation and sunk costs? My own journey, I'm not going to talk here an hour about how I grew up or whatever, but my mom got really sick when I was young. When I was 6 years old, she passed away when I was 16. She spent a lot of those years very, very ill. Because of that, I adapted by, being the person to try to take care of everyone and, to try and put all this pressure on myself and to do everything perfectly and, and just try to hold everyone else up and not take care of me. And until, I basically cratered myself, right? And cracked under the pressure, which led to a whole bunch of drama in my life, which I'm not, that's not the point of this. But the point of living in transformation is I have dedicated the last 5 years of my life to that living in transformation, to undoing the subconscious beliefs, the subconscious blockages, the subconscious, self-sabotaging, keeping myself small, all the subconscious garbage that I had accrued because of, events that happened, when I was a small child, that I carried these things with me. And they really kept me in a limited place, right? Like, despite huge academic achievements and, going the extra mile, being the one that was everybody's go-to person, it was like I was last in line for a promotion at work, right? And it's like, well, I've done all these things. Like the people that you're offering to promote, don't even bother to learn anything, but you're offering them that position, but not me. Like I'm having to fight and say, hey, what about me, right? But it was my own self-conscious limiting beliefs that were keeping me from them saying, hey, well, we got to promote her because look at all these things that she's doing. Like subconsciously, I was keeping myself back from those things, right? And it's something that I didn't realize. Like I just thought, well, these people are just jerks because look at all this stuff that I'm doing and they're just ignoring me, or they're not seeing that I should be the one getting this promotion, right? That was what I was thinking, but that was not, actually it was my subconscious that was keeping me from being the one put out for promotion. So what I had to learn in living in transformation, the process of that was how I was responsible 100% for where I was and where I was not. And let me tell you, that was a really hard thing to accept, because I'm sure everyone has had either some really horrible things happen to them or some really unfair things or whatever it is happen to you. And you're like, well, that's bullshit. There's no way that I'm responsible for that, right? In some way, we are, right? In some way, we brought that horrible circumstance to ourselves, either as a learning experience or as something that was going to catapult us to a higher level. So we brought those things to ourselves, whether consciously or subconsciously, right? And so taking radical responsibility for, wow, I didn't create my mom getting sick and dying of cancer, right? I didn't. Like, I didn't like poison my mom and give her cancer, right? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, like, I chose to incarnate and have those experiences so that I could reach another level of growth, of spiritual and emotional growth. And so, I do believe that God chose those experiences for me to help my growth, right? So, taking radical responsibility instead of saying, well, my life is ruined because my mom got sick and my mom died, and then my dad didn't, pick the perfect fairy godmother to remarry, and all this stuff and whatever, right? And you look at, okay, what can this situation teach me, right? How can this contribute to my transformation and to me really creating something amazing in the world, right? How can this circumstance, which on the outside looks absolutely tragic, absolutely horrible, and that there's no good in it, how can there be something good buried in this situation that is meant to help me? And that is part of living in transformation and taking radical responsibility for your life. You choose step out of victimhood and world's unfair because this happened to me, and because it happened to me, my life's ruined. Because for any situation that you can say, this happened to me and my life's ruined, you can find someone else who's something very, very similar, or the same thing happened to them, and it was the thing that catapulted them to greatness, right? I interviewed an amazing woman named Andrea Josephs, who was a Jamaican immigrant living in the UK. She was born in the UK. She was not from, but her mother was Jamaican, and she had a very abusive relationship. And when it split up, her family gave her a gift, a trip to go to Jamaica, right? And she went to Jamaica and met family and stuff, and had a beautiful time on the island. And she was very naive, and she ended up being used inadvertently without her knowledge as a drug mule, and by some charming young guy, and she got arrested on her return to the UK, and she got sentenced despite her having absolutely no prior record and being very much an innocent victim in this, who was victimized by this guy. She spent time in jail, and she went to prison, in a women's prison, where she was scared to death. She wasn't from that kind of thing. There was a woman who had gone through horrible abuse, and now she's in prison for something that she didn't really do. She didn't know what was happening to her. This guy put the stuff in her luggage, but that time in prison ended up being a catapult for her. She got actually psychotherapy and therapy to help her recover from all this abuse that she had as a child and as a younger person. She became a mentor. She got to read a lot of books, was smart, and helped to teach. And it really catapulted her to the career that she had now. So she, will tell you that going to prison ended up being the best thing that ever happened to her because of how much it transformed her life, right? And so if she wasn't living in transformation, taking radical responsibility, and just said, well, I'm a victim and I got stuck in prison, she would never have, she's an amazing woman. If you go on my YouTube channel, you can find her interview. Her name's Andrea Josephs, where I interviewed her. And so, that's the spirit of living in transformation. That's where you take responsibility. You don't take anything as I'm a victim. You take the responsibility for learning and growing from whatever it is. And for me, and I told you I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life. I've also spent well over $100,000 on this process, working with coaches and buying books and going to retreats and things like that, because there is nothing better that you can invest in than yourself. There is nothing that's going to give you a better rate of return than yourself. Like, I don't even care if you were like that guy who all his amazing classic cars just got auctioned over the weekend, and they raised millions of dollars. He bought all these classic cars, mostly General Motors cars, over the years, and he had been a real estate investor, and he said the cars ended up being a way better investment than the real estate, even though obviously real estate's a really good investment, but the cars obviously paid off even more. But yourself, you are your best investment, because you and your thoughts and your emotions and who you are is what creates your life, what creates your finances, what creates your family situation, and what creates everything that you see around you. And so to live in transformation is to invest in that one thing that is always worth the investment, and that is you, right? And so for me, I will always continue to invest in myself, invest in coaching, invest in retreats, invest in books. Y'all, if you could see how many books I'm reading, about 5 books right now, including the Bible. And it has changed my life so much. Like, I have gone from a person who did very well in her job, right? I told you I didn't get the promotions, but I mean, I made almost $200,000 a year in my corporate position. Got to work with some great people. Now I've had my own business and been able to coach and help other people, grow themselves too. But, I'm only getting better. Like, what I have, what God has for me to create is so incredible. Like, and I am just so excited to continue to work in that process and to create what I want to create. And I'll, give you a little sneak peek. So obviously my passion is helping others. I've always been a helper since I was that 6-year-old girl and my mom was sick with cancer, and I was, doing all the things, helping around the house, learning to cook dinner and do the stuff to help take care of my family. Like, I've always been a helper, right? I've always been one who wants to teach and uplift others. That has always been like my passion. And so I do that in my coaching practice, which I absolutely love, helping entrepreneurs grow themselves, grow their businesses, and grow into the best versions of themselves. But y'all, what I'm really excited to do, and I'm meeting with a woman on Thursday about this, is to mentor young people, right? I think you might have seen the live that I did a couple weeks ago after I had helped mentor my little cousin who's in high school, and her friend, right? And help them with, their college decisions, and kind of like figuring out how to help themselves academically with COVID and with being stuck with online classes and teachers that, aren't really all that focused on teaching just because of technological challenges and stuff, and like really mentor that. Well, that really lit a fire in me. So I'm really excited to be creating another facet of what I do, focused on young people, like tweens and teens and young adults. And what I want for this younger generation is for them to grow up with the advantages, with the emotional intelligence, with being in touch with themselves, with that spirit of looking for what things are going to teach them, all those things that's taken me to age 44 to learn. I want our younger generations, our teens, our tweens, our young 20s, our young adults, to learn these things now, because I think of how much more that I could have done in my life up to this point of 44 years old if I had had that mentoring and that sort of coaching as a young person. So I'm really excited to be meeting with somebody on Thursday and talking about getting in her mentorship program to be mentoring young adults. And that'll be a volunteer position. They'll assign me like 1 to 3 young people to work with to mentor. And I'm just super excited about that, right? Like, I see that God wants me to help our younger generation and these kids grow up so that we can all live in a better world. So that's all part of living in transformation, is, taking control, taking radical responsibility for yourself and your journey and what things are that you've gone through can teach you, and then finding your passion and finding a way to give back. So whether that giving back is, a volunteer thing that you do a few hours a month, like I'll be doing soon with mentoring the young people, or if it becomes your full-time vocation, like whatever that is it's your duty to find that, right? It's your duty to find that for yourself. And you know what? It can be scary. There can be a lot of layers. I can't tell you how many layers that I've gone through, and I know I'm not done yet. Sometimes I'm like, how many layers are in this onion? Like, I'm ready just to be like find my little pearl of great price. But you know, I think that's just, it's part of the journey. It's a journey. It's not necessarily a destination. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to talk about living in transformation, like what that looks like, you know, taking radical responsibility, not being a victim, you know, gaining the knowledge and wisdom out of your experiences, both good and really crappy, because they all serve you, and using that as a tool to create what's really in your heart, right? It's really, really in your heart. Because when you create what's really, really in your heart, that's where you find lasting happiness. It's not, you know, hundreds of millions or hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to bring that happiness. It's really what's creating in your heart. And what's creating in your heart could be a road that also is millions and billions of dollars, because you're meant to use that to do something huge in the world. But it's really just finding that pearl of great price that's in your heart, and letting that out, and really spreading your wings, and not letting any old programming hold you back. And it's just, y'all, it's such a gift. It is such a gift. I just, you know, I've had such a transformative week, and just the rocket is taking off. So I just wanted to share that with you. Really excited about so many things that I have coming up. Things that are in the works and potentially in the works, and I'll share, you know, more as they actually manifest and come to fruition. But in the meantime, if living in transformation is something that, you know, intrigues you, is something that you want to do, and you're not really sure how to get started, you can set up a consultation with me. You can book a call. We'll get on the phone, talk about what that looks like, and you know, what working with me looks like, and like kind of what transformation looks like to you. In order to do that, you can either send me a DM here on Messenger. You can text Moon. If you're in the United States, you can text Moon to 90407, which actually gets you a link directly to my calendar where you can book a consult. And I look forward to helping you really create that transformation in your life, because I can't even explain to you how amazing it is. Like, you just have to experience it for yourself. So lots of love to you on this beautiful Tuesday, and I look forward to checking in with you again tomorrow.